At my grandfather's funeral, I delivered a tearful eulogy in front of 200 people. But as I choked back a sob, it wasn't from grief. It was from the horrifying secret I carried. He wasn't dead, he was trapped. And I was his only hope. Hello everyone, my name is Gloria, and the story I'm about to tell you isn't easy to share. It's about a beautiful two-story colonial house in Savannah, Georgia, with a wraparound porch and ancient oak trees dripping with Spanish moss. It's the house I grew up in, a place that was supposed to represent warmth, legacy, and family. But I learned that behind the most pristine facades, the darkest secrets fester. I'm standing in the upstairs hallway, my hand trembling as I hold an old, forgotten key. I'm facing my childhood bedroom, but the familiar brass knob I remembered has been replaced by the cold, unforgiving gleam of a new deadbolt. My parents, Walter and Mildred, told me it was just for storage now, a place for dusty relics and forgotten things. They lied. When I finally managed to turn that lock and push the heavy door open, the stale air that hit me wasn't the sweet smell of old books and memories. It was the sterile, medicinal scent of a prison. And inside, I didn't find relics. I found my grandfather, Lawrence. The same vibrant man they buried after a grand, tear-soaked funeral 6 months ago. He was alive, trapped in a hospital bed, a hollowed-out shell of the titan who raised me. 5 minutes later, with my heart hammering against my ribs, I dialed 911. Not as a loving granddaughter, but as a witness. An executioner. I made that call to detonate their carefully constructed lie and begin my fight to reclaim the $300 million inheritance they stole from us both. If you've ever felt that gut-wrenching moment when you realize the people you trust most are the ones hiding the darkest secrets, just take a second and hit that like button. It's a silent signal that you understand this fight is about more than just a locked room, it's about the truth. Now, I know what you might be thinking. A 911 call is an ending, a climax. But for me, that call was just the beginning. It was the first shot fired in a war I never wanted to fight, but one that, in that moment, I knew I had to win. This story isn't just about the shock of finding my grandfather breathing in that locked room. It's about the cold, calculated fury that followed. It's about how I, Gloria, the quiet historian who was always overshadowed by my charismatic older brother, took my heartbreak and rage and forged them into a weapon. This is the story of how a Southern family's pristine, church-going reputation was systematically dismantled, lie by lie. This isn't just a tale of a horrifying discovery. It's a playbook on how to get justice when the very people who should protect you become your jailers. It's one of those unbelievable family revenge stories you might see in a movie, except this was my life. Over the next few videos, we're going to walk through every single step. From uncovering the intricate web of financial fraud my parents wove to the moment I faced my own mother in court, and watched the $30 million empire she built on a heartless deception crumble into dust right before her eyes. This is the story of how I took back my name, my grandfather's life, and a legacy they tried to bury alive. If you've ever felt like the forgotten one in your family, the one whose accomplishments were minimized while another was placed on a pedestal, just type the city you're watching from in the comments below. Let's see how far this story of fighting back reaches. Let's create a map of survivors who refuse to be erased. But before we dive deeper into the darkness, I need you to see the light they tried to extinguish. To understand the true gravity of their betrayal, you first have to understand who my grandfather, Lawrence, was to me. He wasn't just a name on a building or a number in a bank account. In many ways, he was my world. He was a titan, a self-made man who built a financial empire from nothing but grit and an uncanny ability to see the future. But to me, he was the man whose study smelled of old leather and pipe tobacco, whose voice was a low, reassuring rumble that could make any problem seem small. I spent my childhood in that study, sitting across from him at a heavy mahogany desk, playing chess on an ivory set he'd brought back from a trip in the 50s. He didn't just teach me the moves, he taught me strategy. He taught me history, not just the history in my books, but our family's history, the story of every brick and every dollar he'd earned. My brother, Richard, saw him as a bank vault. I saw him as a library, a living history of everything I aspired to be. While Richard was out spending his allowance on fast cars, I was listening to Grandpa Lawrence talk about market crashes in the 80s and the resilience of the human spirit. "You have the builder's spirit, Gloria," he'd often tell me, his eyes twinkling. "Richard has the spender's hands. Never forget the difference." My parents, Walter and Mildred, they respected his power, but I don't think they ever truly understood his heart. To them, he was the source of their lavish lifestyle. To me, he was the source of my values. And that connection, that deep, unbreakable bond, is why their betrayal wasn't just about money. It was a desecration of a sacred trust. That sacred trust I mentioned, it meant nothing to them. To the outside world, especially in a city like Savannah where your family name is your currency, we were the perfect family. The respectable Walters, pillars of the community. My father, Walter, sat on the board of the Historical Society. My mother, Mildred, chaired the annual hospital gala. They were masters of the graceful nod, the well-timed charitable donation, the perfectly curated public image that hid the rot underneath. Then, one crisp morning last March, their performance reached its grand finale. The call came from my mother. Her voice, a carefully rehearsed symphony of grief, informed me that Grandpa Lawrence was gone. A sudden, massive heart attack in his sleep. "Peaceful," she said. A blessing, really, at his age, they all whispered at the funeral. The funeral itself was a masterpiece of deception. It was held at the Grand Cathedral Basilica of St. John the Baptist, with half the city's elite in attendance, including the mayor. My mother, draped in black Chanel, played the part of the heartbroken daughter so convincingly she probably deserved an Oscar. My brother Richard stood beside her, a perfect imitation of the stoic, responsible heir, ready to step into my grandfather's enormous shoes. And I stood there between them, my face numb with genuine grief, accepting condolences for a death that never happened. I mourned the man I loved, never once suspecting that he was just a few hundred feet away, alive and imprisoned in his own home. It's sickening, the roles we are sometimes forced to play. Let me know, were you ever the scapegoat too? Type savior in the comments if you were always the family fixer. Or star if you were always the golden child. I want to see the balance in our community here. The funeral was just the opening act. The real betrayal came 2 weeks later, staged in the cold, impersonal setting of a downtown law office. The room felt like a tomb, all dark wood paneling and the scent of old paper, a place where family ties were formally severed by legalese. I sat on a stiff leather chair, naively expecting a celebration of my grandfather's life and legacy. I thought we would hear his final wishes, perhaps a sentimental letter, a fair distribution of the empire he built. My grandfather had always told me his will was an ironclad document, designed to protect the family's future and my place within it. But the man reading the document wasn't our longtime family attorney. He was a stranger with cold eyes and a shark smile. He read from a document dated just weeks before my grandfather's death, a time when, I now realize, he was likely already a prisoner in his own home. The words echoed in the silent room. A new last will and testament. It was a complete reversal of everything my grandfather had ever promised me. The family holding company, the stock portfolio, the historic Savannah estate, the entire $300 million fortune was to be placed under the sole control of my brother, Richard. Richard, who couldn't even balance his own checking account. He sat there, trying to look somber, but I could see the smug, triumphant glint in his eyes. And me? Gloria, the granddaughter who shared his love for history and strategy? I was bequeathed a one-time parting gift of $50,000. It wasn't an inheritance, it was severance pay. It was a slap in the face. My mother, Mildred, then delivered the final blow, her voice devoid of any warmth. "We think it's time you stood on your own 2 feet, dear," she said. "Your grandfather would have wanted you to find your own way." That night, I packed a single suitcase, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest, and walked out of the house I was born in, officially in exile. For months, I tried to build a new life. I rented a small apartment on the other side of Savannah, a world away from the manicured lawns and old money whispers of my former life. I used the $50,000, the insult money, to pay my rent and focused on my historical research, burying myself in the past to escape the painful present. I told myself to let it go, to accept that greed had corrupted the people I loved. But a splinter of wrongness was lodged deep in my mind, and I couldn't get it out. It was the speed of it all. The sudden heart attack, the conveniently updated will. It felt too clean, too perfect. The excuse I needed to go back came in the form of a memory. My grandfather's collection of rare, hand-drawn maps of the Georgia coast from the 18th century. They were his most prized possessions, and he had promised them to me. They were still in his study, the room that used to be my bedroom. When I called, my mother's voice was laced with annoyance, but she reluctantly agreed to let me come by to retrieve them. The moment I stepped back into that house, the air felt different, thicker with secrets. When I headed upstairs towards the study, my brother Richard blocked the hallway, his arms crossed. "You can't go in there," he said, his voice holding an unfamiliar edge of authority. My father appeared behind him. The room's being renovated, Gloria. Structural issues. But I could see the panic flickering in his eyes. A few minutes later, my mother joined them, offering a different excuse. "We're having it fumigated for termites. You need to stay away." Renovations, termites, their stories didn't line up. And then I saw it, the new, heavy deadbolt on the door, a modern piece of hardware that looked completely out of place on the antique wood. It wasn't a lock to keep people out during renovations. It was a lock to keep someone, or something, in. I left that day empty-handed, but I took something far more valuable with me, the certainty that my family was hiding a terrible secret. That deadbolt haunted my thoughts. The certainty I felt leaving the house that day wasn't just a hunch. It was a call to action. The splinter of wrongness had grown into a roaring fire of obsession. I knew I couldn't just walk back in there, so I started digging where my grandfather had always taught me to look first. The money. He used to say, "Gloria, every secret has a price tag. You just have to find the ledger." I still had online access to an old trust account he'd set me up with for college, one my parents had likely forgotten about. For nights, fueled by coffee and a growing sense of dread, I pored over statements, transaction, histories, anything I could find. And then I saw it. A recurring monthly payment, a significant one, for $50,000, wired from a holding company. It wasn't going to a construction firm for renovations or an exterminator for termites. It was going to a discrete entity named Apex Health Services, a private, high-end medical provider specializing in in-home, long-term critical care. My blood ran cold. Palliative care is for the living. Then, I remembered Old Man Abernathy, our family's groundskeeper for over 40 years. They'd forced him into a sudden retirement right after the funeral. I found him living in a small cottage about 20 miles outside Savannah. He told me he didn't think much of it at the time, but the week before my grandfather supposedly died, he saw a private medical transport van with blacked-out windows pull up to the house in the dead of night. He never saw it leave. They let him go 2 days later. A secret medical company. A mysterious van. The pieces were no longer just suspicious, they were sinister. It's a chilling feeling when the place you call home starts to feel like a crime scene, isn't it? I'm curious. What time is it right now where you are watching this? Let's see what time the truth starts coming to light all around the world. The clues were now circling a terrifying possibility, but they were still circumstantial. A van, payments to a medical company, my parents could create a plausible lie to explain it all away. I needed something physical. Something undeniable that connected that locked room to a living, breathing person. And I knew exactly when and where to find it. Every Tuesday at 9 p.m., my father, Walter, a man of unshakable routine, would wheel the large garbage and recycling bins from the side of the house down their long, 100-yard driveway to the curb for the Wednesday morning pickup. It was a small, domestic ritual that was about to become the key to unlocking their entire conspiracy. So there I was, parked a block away in my beat-up sedan, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Dressed in dark clothes, I felt less like a historian and more like a private investigator on some low-budget crime show. I waited until the lights in the house went out. Then, with a small flashlight clenched between my teeth, I crept towards the bins. Rummaging through my own family's trash was a new low, but I was far past the point of caring about dignity. I sorted through junk mail and empty food containers until my fingers brushed against a small black plastic bag, heavier than the rest. Inside, Amongst discarded paper towels was medical waste, packaging for sterile gloves, used alcohol swabs, and IV tubing. And then, my light landed on it. An empty glass vial and a used syringe. The label on the vial was still perfectly intact. It was for lorazepam, a powerful sedative used in long-term care. But it was the prescription sticker from the compounding pharmacy that made my breath catch in my throat. The fill date was from 2 days ago. And the patient's name was Lawrence Walters, my grandfather. A prescription, filled this week, for a man who was 6 months in his grave. The half-truth was horrifying, but the whole truth was still something my mind refused to imagine. Holding that cold glass vial in my hand, the name Lawrence Walters illuminated by my phone's flashlight, everything shifted. The fog of confusion and grief burned away, leaving behind a diamond-hard certainty. The question was no longer what my family was hiding. The only question left was how I was going to get into that room and prove it. I was done being a victim, done being an exile who was cast aside. It was time to become a threat. My mind raced, piecing together a plan. I couldn't force the door. That would be too loud, too obvious, and would alert them immediately. I needed a perfect opportunity and a key. The opportunity came to me in a flash of bitter irony. My mother's proudest annual event, the Savannah Hospital Gala, was this coming Saturday. It was the one night of the year I knew for a fact the entire family would be out of the house for at least 5 hours, playing the part of the city's generous benefactors, basking in the glow of their fraudulent legacy. That was my window. As for the key, I tore my small apartment apart until I found it, a dusty box of keepsakes from my childhood. And inside, nestled in old velvet, was a small tarnished brass key. It was a skeleton key my grandfather had given me when I was a teenager, a master for all the old, original locks in the house, before my parents installed the deadbolt. The key to the kingdom, Gloria, he had called it with a wink. He had no idea how right he was. I would use his own key to unlock his prison. The plan was set. This Saturday, while they were sipping champagne and accepting applause, I would go home one last time. Have you ever been pushed to a point where you had to break the rules to do what was right? If you know that feeling, if you believe this is a story that needs to be told, this is your time to hit subscribe. Join a community of people who understand that sometimes the only way forward is to break in. Saturday night arrived with the oppressive humidity of a Savannah summer, thick and heavy, like a held breath. I watched from my car parked a block away as their black Lincolntown car pulled out of the long driveway. My mother was a silhouette of sequins and diamonds, my father and brother sharp and handsome in their tuxedos. The perfect family, off to their perfect party. I gave them 20 minutes, an eternity where every second crawled by, then I slipped out of my car. I moved through the sprawling, manicured gardens like a ghost in my own backyard, the place where I'd had tea parties and chased fireflies. Inside, the house was eerily silent. Every creak of the polished floorboards sounded like a gunshot in the stillness. I climbed the grand staircase, my steps muffled by the thick Persian runner, and approached the forbidden door, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. My old skeleton key slid into the original lock below the deadbolt. It turned with a soft, metallic click. I held my breath, my hand reaching for the deadbolt's knob, fully expecting it to be locked solid. But it turned. It was unlocked. In his haste and arrogance, rushing to his gala, my father had forgotten. I pushed the door open into near-total darkness. The first thing that hit me wasn't a sight, but a smell. A cloying, sterile mixture of antiseptic, bleach, and something else. The faint, metallic scent of sickness. As my eyes adjusted to the single dim lamp in the corner, the scene materialized. My childhood bedroom had been erased. The light blue walls were covered in drab, gray acoustic foam panels. My bookshelf, once filled with novels and trophies, now held racks of IV bags and medical supplies. And in the center of the room stood a cold, metal hospital bed with the rails up. A heart monitor beeped a slow, steady rhythm. In that bed lay the ghost of my grandfather. It was him, but his skin was ashen, his arms were a canvas of bruises from needles, and his eyes were open but vacant, lost in a chemically induced fog. They hadn't just faked his death. They had buried him alive, right here. For a full minute, I think my heart actually stopped beating. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process. My brain was a screaming vortex of denial and horror, rejecting the reality my eyes were feeding it. The steady, soft beep of the heart monitor was the only thing tethering me to the moment. This living ghost, this prisoner, was my grandfather. And my family, my own mother and father, had done this to him, day after day, for 6 months. And then he made a sound. A soft, barely audible moan from deep in his chest. A flicker of pain in those vacant eyes. It wasn't a word, but I heard it as clearly as if he had screamed. It was a plea for help. That single sound shattered my paralysis and replaced it with a white-hot rage I have never felt before or since. This wasn't just greed, this was monstrous. This was the systematic, daily torture of a helpless man for the sake of money and status. In that instant, I knew I didn't just want the inheritance back. I wanted retribution. My hands were shaking, but my purpose was like steel. I pulled out my phone, its screen a blinding light in the dim, sick room. I dialed 911. When the operator's calm voice came on the line, I matched her tone, my own voice a chillingly steady whisper that betrayed the hurricane inside me. I need police and an ambulance at 127 Abercorn Drive. I'm reporting a case of kidnapping, false imprisonment, and severe elder abuse. The victim's name is Lawrence Walters. It's the loneliest feeling in the world to know you're about to destroy your own family to do what's right. If you've ever had to stand up for the truth, even if you had to do it alone, I want you to write "I stand" in the comments below. Let's fill this space with silent strength. I had barely disconnected the call when I heard the crunch of tires on the long, gravel driveway. They were home early. For a split second, a jolt of fear shot through me, but it was immediately replaced by a grim sense of finality. It was too late for them. In the distance, carried on the humid night air, I could hear the first faint wail of approaching sirens. The cavalry was coming, and I had summoned them. The front door opened and my family swept in, still buzzing from the gala, my mother laughing about something the mayor had said. They stopped dead when they saw me emerge from the shadows at the top of the grand staircase, my phone still clutched in my hand. The laughter died in my mother's throat. Her eyes darted from my face to the open bedroom door behind me, and the color drained from her cheeks. "What?" she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. "Have you done?" Before I could answer, the night outside exploded. Red and blue lights strobed across the pristine white walls of the foyer, dancing crazily over the stoic, oil-painted portraits of our ancestors. The sirens were deafening now, a righteous scream in the quiet, wealthy neighborhood. 2 police officers and a team of paramedics stormed through the front door without knocking. It was pure, beautiful chaos. While the paramedics rushed past us up the stairs to my grandfather, the police began separating my family, their voices calm but firm. I watched, a silent observer to the destruction I had unleashed, as the mask was finally violently ripped away. My parents, the pillars of Savannah society, were reduced to stammering suspects in their own marble entryway. Their carefully crafted empire didn't crumble in a boardroom or a stock market crash. It died right there, under the cold, flashing lights of justice, for all the neighbors and the whole world to see. The weeks that followed were a blur of lawyers, police interviews, and screaming headlines on the front page of the Savannah Morning News. The Walters family scandal was the only thing anyone in the city could talk about, a spectacular fall from grace that played out in public. My family's pristine reputation was incinerated overnight. The legal battle, fueled by the mountain of evidence I had uncovered, was swift and brutal. They were charged with a host of federal crimes: wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, kidnapping, and severe elder abuse. My mother, Mildred, the cold, calculating mastermind, was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. My father, her weak-willed accomplice who chose greed over his own father, received 15. Richard, whose arrogance finally shattered when he realized the money was gone forever, was given 10 years for his part in the conspiracy. The fraudulent will was nullified, their assets frozen. Justice, in the eyes of the law, was served. But the real victory wasn't in that courtroom. It was in a quiet, sunlit room at Memorial Health University Medical Center. My grandfather, Lawrence, was the true miracle. Freed from his chemical prison, with round-the-clock care and my constant presence, he began to return. The light, slowly but surely, came back to his eyes. One afternoon, as I was reading to him from one of his favorite history books, he spoke his first word in over 6 months. My name. A few weeks later, after a thorough evaluation, he was declared fully mentally competent by the court. The first thing he did was sign a new, ironclad will, making me the sole heir and executor of his entire $300 million estate. The storm had finally passed. If you are rebuilding your life right now, or you're waiting for your own storm to pass, I want you to simply type the word rebirth in the comments. Let's fill this space with hope and celebrate our new beginnings together. While my parents were the architects of this monstrous plan, my brother Richard was its living, breathing purpose. They didn't really do it for themselves. They were already wealthy. They orchestrated this entire nightmare for him. They wanted to hand their golden boy an empire he had never earned and couldn't possibly manage. And for those 6 months, he played the part of the new king with absolute relish. He bought a 40-foot yacht he shamelessly named the Prince and docked it at the most expensive slip at the marina. He traded his perfectly good Mercedes for a cherry red Ferrari that he would race through the narrow, historic streets of Savannah, a menace to everyone. He purchased a penthouse apartment overlooking the river, where he threw lavish parties for a new circle of shallow, sycophantic friends who loved his money, not him. He was living a fantasy, paid for by every moment of my grandfather's suffering. Which is why the most grimly satisfying part of the legal process was the asset forfeiture. I made a point of being there to watch. I watched as federal marshals towed the Prince from its slip, its ridiculous name glinting in the sunday. I watched as the Ferrari was unceremoniously loaded onto a flatbed truck, a small crowd of onlookers taking photos with their phones. He had flaunted his unearned wealth, and now, his humiliation was just as public. His new friends vanished the moment the accounts were frozen. The penthouse was seized. On his day of sentencing, I saw him stripped of all his finery, wearing a standard-issue orange jumpsuit. The smug entitlement was finally gone, replaced by a look of sheer, hollow panic. He understood, at last. The money, the cars, the status, it was all an illusion. It had never truly been his. He was a living testament to my grandfather's old saying, "Richard has the spender's hands." He was given a kingdom he didn't build, and it all slipped through his fingers like sand. So, the court battles were over. The villains of my story were behind bars. The $300 million estate was legally, rightfully, and finally mine. But standing alone in my grandfather's now quiet study, the official documents heavy in my hand, I realized the revenge was over, the victory felt quiet. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by a profound question that would define the rest of my life. What now? I could have sold everything. I could have liquidated the assets, moved to New York or Paris, and disappeared into a life of quiet, anonymous luxury. A part of me, the part that was exhausted and scarred, was tempted. But that would have been the ultimate betrayal of my grandfather's spirit. He wasn't a spender or a recluse. He was a builder. And looking at his portrait hanging over the fireplace, the same twinkle in his eye I remembered so well, I understood that my true purpose wasn't just to be an heir. It was to become a builder too. So, I made a decision that shocked the army of financial advisors the court had assigned to me. I took a significant portion of the estate, $50 million, and used it to establish the Lawrence Foundation. Its mission is simple but fierce: to protect the vulnerable elderly from the kind of financial exploitation and medical abuse that he was subjected to. We now fund pro bono legal aid services for seniors who are being cheated out of their homes. We lobby for stronger state and federal protection laws. And we provide grants to elder care facilities that prioritize compassion over profit. I sold that big, haunted house on Abercorn Drive, but I kept the company his company. I'm running it now, guided not by my parents' ruthless greed, but by my grandfather's values of integrity and vision. I'm creating a new Walters family legacy, one that will be remembered for justice, not deception. So that's the story. It's one of the more extreme family revenge stories you'll ever hear, but I know that at its heart, it's about the kind of quiet truths many of us face. It's about what happens when the people who are supposed to love you the most fail you the most profoundly. And in the years since that night, I've had a lot of time to think about the big words: justice, family, karma, and forgiveness. Justice, I've learned, isn't just about prison sentences and legal victories. It's about consequences finally catching up to choices. My family built their lives on a foundation of greed, and like any poorly built structure, it was doomed to collapse under its own weight. That is a form of karma that no lawyer can argue against. I've also had to redefine what family means. The family I thought I had was an illusion. And I've learned that true family isn't always about blood. It's defined by loyalty, by respect, by who stands with you in the fire. My grandfather and I, we were a family. The community we're building right here, sharing our truths, that feels like family now. And the hardest lesson has been forgiveness. I don't think I can ever forgive the act. What they did was a deep and profound evil, but I have chosen to release the bitterness. Holding on to that kind of rage is like letting them keep a room locked inside your own heart, long after you've escaped. Forgiveness, for me, isn't about setting them free. It's about setting myself free. It's about choosing to let my future be defined by the legacy I'm building, not by the prison they built for my grandfather. Thank you for listening, for being a part of this journey. The world may never know the battles you've fought in silence, the betrayals you've endured. But we do. If these stories, these truths about fighting back and rebuilding, speak to the unwritten chapters of your own life, then this is your space. Subscribe and become a part of a community that knows the most powerful legacy we can leave is one of truth and resilience.